So, hi everyone. I am sat today with Mandy, who is very generously offered to chat with me and to share her story of her diagnosis with breast cancer. And yeah, so Mandy, thank you so much for chatting with me.
That's
Um, I
okay. Thank
guess,
you for having me.
thank you. It's always good to just start kind of at that pivotal point when breast cancer kind of came into your life. We all kind of know that date and that time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a few weeks before my 39th birthday, and we were on holiday in Greece, and I was feeling fine. No, no sign of anything whatsoever. We were sat having dinner, and I was just kind of doing, as you do, you kind of fiddle and you fidget. And all of a sudden I felt this huge lump in my armpit, and it was quite sore actually as well. And I was kind of like, what the hell is that? I got up from the table, went to the toilet, was kind of a little bit panicked and not really sure what was going on. Then I spoke to my husband and I said, I found this lump. And he said to me, look, we're kind of 3 days into our holiday. We're here for 2 weeks. Why don't you phone your doctor, make an appointment for when you get home, and try and enjoy the rest of the holiday. So I did. Day after we got home, I saw my GP, and thankfully, he referred me straight away to the breast clinic. But he said he wasn't worried. He was kind of like, it's probably might be an infection. It could be anything. You're young. Well, in fact, his words were, "You're too young to have breast cancer." But I'm gonna,
Oh,
but yeah,
famous last words of
the
his.
famous last words. But he thankfully he didn't dismiss it, and he did refer me. But those,
Was he not worried because it was painful? Was that the thing that
yeah,
made
I think
him?
that's what it was. Yeah, I think
Because
that's
I
what,
also was painful swelling under my armpits,
yeah, yeah,
and the
and
pain came through me even.
they do say that breast cancer generally isn't painful, or the symptoms aren't pain. And so I went to the breast clinic, and those words were ringing in my ears. It's probably nothing. You'll be fine. For some reason, I was going to go on my own, but I didn't. Someone offered to come with me, who I didn't actually know very well, but she just said, "Look, do you want me to come with you?" And it was my mother-in-law's friend, and I said, "Yeah, go on then." I don't know why, because I was determined it was going to be nothing and it was going to be fine, and I'd be in and out 5 minutes. But she did come with me, and I had a mammogram, and that was clear. Nothing showed on the mammogram. I then went in to have an ultrasound, and it was literally within minutes of them hovering over what they were looking at in my armpit. It felt like all hell broke loose. The radiographer's face kind of dropped. Next thing I know, she's talking about needing to do biopsies and needle biopsies, core biopsies. So that's all happening. And I'm then taken into a room with a consultant, and they didn't say, "We think you have cancer." They said, "There's something very suspicious, and you need to prepare yourself," were their words. And I was just totally floored, totally floored. And I'm so glad that my mother-in-law's friend was there. Because otherwise I would have been totally alone, and she was fantastic. My husband came to pick.
When was this, Mandy?
Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I didn't start with that. It was
No, that's okay.
2016, so a
Okay,
little
so
while ago
yeah, so
now.
pre all the lockdownness
Yeah,
and yeah, that's
yeah, yeah.
makes such a difference. I think having
It
that
did.
somebody there, that
It
because
did.
also I guess when that was going on for you, there's so much emotion. Were you even able to? You remember things like suspicious. You remember
Yeah.
keywords. Was it like? Were you able to take on everything that was being said to you?
Yes, I think so. I mean, you can't. It's really hard to explain, because from that moment you can remember everything, like to the minutest detail, but it still feels really surreal and like a dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really it's hard to explain to someone who hasn't been through it. Um, but yeah, my husband came to pick us up from the hospital. I got in the car. I told him what they'd said, and his response was, "Don't be so ridiculous. You're being overly dramatic." Um, that's and it was
That's
only
kind
when,
of our protective
yeah,
mechanism, survival mode kicking in, isn't it?
yeah,
Like, you
yeah,
just can't
absolutely. He
get to
couldn't.
those places. How
He
long did you have to wait with this kind of thought that, okay, it's maybe suspicious, I don't know what it is? Like, how
Yeah,
long?
it
And
was.
also, one more
Sorry.
question. So, did they, on the ultrasound, did they see anything in your breast, or was it just the lymph nodes? So they did, yeah. So we had such similar experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They found an area of tumours in my breast um, that weren't palpable. You couldn't feel them when
Yeah.
because they did. They tried. I was examined fully, and they didn't show up on the mammogram either. So,
Yeah. Same.
so yeah, it was the lymph node that kind of flagged it, and then they were looking
Yeah.
elsewhere. But yeah, that was my kind of the first story. I found out 2 weeks later, I think, after the biopsy results came back, that it was apparently grade 1 stage 2B mucinous carcinoma, which is quite a rare cancer.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I was saying to somebody the other day, I kind of feel like I've done a degree in breast cancer,
Oh,
but even then, I don't think I've heard of that particular. I know there are lots of different
there are
types of
lots
breast
of
cancer. I know breast cancer is this umbrella, but yeah, I've not heard of this type.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a rare one. It affects about I think they say 2% of breast cancer diagnosis worldwide.
wow,
And
okay.
it's kind of split in two. You have pure mucinous carcinoma, and you have mixed mucinous carcinoma, where it could be kind of mixed with an IDC or something like that. I had the pure version, which which is
It's
very
even
rare,
more rare.
but effectively it's characterized by the cancer cells floating in a mucus. Um,
Okay.
so the tumours themselves, that would explain why they're not really palpable, because they're very, very soft. But yeah, so it's a strange one. But I was told when they gave me the diagnosis, my consultant actually used the words, "It's really good news. It's a really well-behaved cancer." Of all the cancers to get, she said,
A
it's
well-behaved one sounds,
it's a
yeah.
good one. And I was kind of like, okay, well, that's a bit of good
There's,
news.
that
Um,
is good news, isn't it? There's a lot out there, though, that does say, like,
it
it
didn't
is
turn out to
good.
be well behaved.
Well, this is what I was going to say,
Yeah.
right? Like, it can diminish for the person in that moment. Like,
Mm,
you've still heard you've got cancer. You've
mm,
still, so yes, we do want to hold on to the positives, but seeing as you've just said, it didn't even turn out to be well behaved. Sometimes these sweeping statements like you're too young to
yeah.
get breast cancer, or this is the good cancer,
Mhm,
they just aren't helpful when you
yeah.
don't really, when things are very uncertain. So
Yeah. And that was
it didn't
just
turn out to be well behaved.
it did, and that was
Naughty
off the back
cancer.
of the biopsy results. I then went on to have MRI, because they needed to identify exactly where the cancer was before my surgery. So I had surgery first. I then went on to have chemotherapy and then radiotherapy, and I'm still on tamoxifen now, because it was estrogen and progesterone positive. Um, so so yeah, the MRI I had, they found the cancer, and I was offered a skin and nipple sparing mastectomy, because the cancer turned out to be about 3.5 centimeters in total. So I had the mastectomy with full axillary node clearance. Thankfully, they found only one. The big lymph node
One.
was affected. Um, yeah, then I went on to have chemo. The chemo story is an interesting one, because the results after my mastectomy came back that it was grade 2, not grade 1. And I was told by the oncologist that in terms of my prognosis and the benefits of chemo for a mucinous carcinoma, it was very borderline. And so he kind of gave me the option. It's up to you. Do you want to have chemo or not? And that was an impossible decision. I couldn't compute that in my head because, on the one hand, I'm thinking, well, it's probably going to be horrible. And it's going to extend my treatment. On the other hand, if I don't do it and it comes back, how do you live with those decisions? And my oncologist said to me, there is one test we can do, one more test that might give us a bit more information, because the Oncotype DX test was not available to me because it was already node positive. So they don't do that test, which kind of gives you your individual prognosis and all that kind of thing. And it was called the Ki-67 protein test. And that tests how quickly the cancer cells are replicating. And mucinous carcinoma, it's meant to be well behaved, very slow growing, non-aggressive cancer. My Ki-67 protein test came back really high. So it was replicating, it was aggressive, it was not doing what mucinous carcinoma should be. And at that point, my oncologist said, you need to have chemo. So
I guess that test was a real gift in a way, because that is an impossible decision, I would imagine, to make. Like you say, sometimes I found getting someone else to help me make that decision was really handy too. Like there was one point where I could decide, I was given the choice of keep nipples or not to keep nipples. And, these kind of conversations, you're like, oh God, I don't know. I really don't know. There's too many decisions being made. And eventually my plastic surgeon said, do you want me to help you? Because I will do a better job if we take the nipples, because that allowed him to kind of, I guess, have better access. I didn't actually ask the question, but and as soon as he said that, I was like, perfect, done, take them, be gone, So being told you needed chemo, did you feel at all relieved that the decision had been taken out of your hands?
100%. Absolutely. It was such a relief to know that it wasn't on me, because you have so much else going on, that it's just too big a thing. I think I'd already reconciled with probably having chemo because of my age and all those kind of things. I just thought, I just want to throw everything at it, throw everything at it and hope for the best. But
how did you find chemo?
Not good. Not good. I only managed 4 rounds. I was meant to have 6 of EC, so epirubalin and I can't even remember the names now, but EC chemotherapy, the Red Devil.
Really strong. You were 6 of those.
I was meant to have 6, but I only managed to manage the 4 rounds, and I was sick as a dog. Awful sickness. And after I had it on a Friday, my first cycle, obviously the chemo ward was closed over the weekend, and because you sign a consent form with all the side effects, sickness, vomiting, diarrhea, blah blah blah, when it happened I thought it was normal. So I rode it out for 3 days, just constant. My poor husband and my kids, I don't know how they coped with it.
How old were your kids at the time?
So they were 8 years ago now, so 8 and 4. Yeah. They're all right. But yeah, I was very poorly, and I rang my oncologist on the Monday morning and I said, I'm not doing that again. I can't do that again. And he said, what happened? And I explained, and he said, you need to come in now. Number one, you need to come in. We need to rehydrate you, and we'll have a chat when you get here. And I did. I went in. They gave me some IV paracetamol, which is magic stuff. Really magic. Yeah,
really is.
and fluids, and I started to feel better. And my oncologist said to me, "Look, there is stuff we can do to help. I think we're going to need a syringe driver of anti-sickness drugs to get you through the next rounds." And that's what happened for the next 3 rounds. I had they put a syringe driver in with a cocktail of anti-sickness 3 hours before they did the chemo, and then they did the chemo, and then I had the syringe driver for another week afterwards. And
Did
that
that help? Did it
it
make a
did.
difference? Yeah.
Yeah, it made such a difference, and it meant that I could get through those next 3 rounds of chemo. But I was my last round, I was neutropenic. I was really poorly. I came down with a cold. I was exhausted, and again, my oncologist said, "Look, you've had enough. We've done 4, which is really good. Let's leave it at that." So that was the decision. Again, that decision was kind of taken out of my hands.
How did you feel about that?
A little disappointed, I suppose, but he kind of explained it to me in a way that was understandable. It was like, that was the 4 were the kind of really bashing it, and then the last 2 is a bit of an insurance policy. So
It's so difficult though, isn't it? Because and this is maybe again the thing that you can really only understand when you're there.
mhm,
The chemo is horrific. Like you feel
yeah.
dreadful, but you still want it. You
Yes.
want it because you like you say, throw everything at it. You want, like, I remember having this conversation like, oh, maybe we can't finish it off. Again, this was more to do with lockdown and to do with all the things that were going on at that time and decisions being made about whether people could carry on with their treatment or not. I just remember thinking, I have to have it. I have to have it all. That's in
Mhm.
my head now. So yeah, it's really hard to understand that you want, because you just want to keep having these drugs that make you feel horrific.
Yeah, yeah. But you do, it is
But
temporary. It's, for us,
yeah,
thankfully, primary diagnosis, all that kind of thing, it's temporary. So it's just another kind of destination you need to get to on that on that.
this is really important, I think, this conversation to have, because I hope people watching, maybe they're in treatment at the minute, and it's a really empowering thing to know, like, to speak to your team
Absolutely.
with any concerns. With,
Yeah,
you said you had it on the Friday, and then the weekend your brain was like, oh, I'll wait till Monday, but actually
they
I'm
did
sure you
say
had a number you could have called at
they
any
did say
time.
that was
And
not normal. You should have rung.
yeah. And
Um,
I think that's the thing about chemo, is it's so different. It's so varied. Every single person reacts completely uniquely.
mhm,
I've said before, lots of people I know, they work through, they maybe
mhm,
felt just fatigued, and that was about it. I didn't struggle with my nausea, so that was not something, I
yeah,
kind of would feel it was there, but it
yeah,
didn't impact. I just
no,
wanted it. I felt a bit like I was hungover, and I just
yeah,
wanted to eat loads of salt and vinegar crisps and strawberries, weirdly.
yeah,
But everyone is different, and there are some more extreme things
mhm,
that can happen. And I
mhm,
guess, for instance, like we're talking about OWise now, I didn't have the app when I was going through
right,
treatment. I wish I had.
mhm,
You can track your symptoms there, and you can, link that with your team. And then, so
absolutely.
there's all these important things. Like, it's really difficult, isn't it, to go from being someone that's well, and you felt so
Mhm.
well when you were diagnosed, to suddenly feeling so unwell, but not wanting to really bother people with how unwell you feel because you're used to feeling well.
Well, and
So I even found it weird getting a slight temperature and
I
calling up the
know,
number, because
I
I'd
know,
been so used to before, like, oh, I'll just ride this out at home, like,
yeah,
not even take a
absolutely,
paracetamol, just I need to drink more water.
yeah,
So yeah,
it's
you
very
enter
true.
a stage where just make that phone call, speak to the professionals, tell them about anything you're having. They would want to have that conversation with you.
Absolutely. And funnily enough, my oncologist that's actually said to me that Monday morning when I went in, he said, "Do you know what? When you walked through the door after I'd read your file, I knew you were going to be trouble, but I didn't want to worry you because he read my file. He could see that I'd had hyperemesis with both my pregnancies.
Okay.
And other things were red flags to
For
him.
anyone watching, that's when you're really sick, isn't it,
Yes,
during
that's
pregnancy?
extreme morning sickness. And he just said, you are one of these people that is highly hormonal, and we were pumping kind of hormonal drugs into you. And that, yeah, he said that's one of the reasons that you had such an extreme reaction. So I mean, if that's helpful to anybody about to start treatment, if you were very sick in pregnancy and you've got a hormone positive breast cancer, then yeah, something just to be aware of, that
Yeah, and
when it
also the
comes to
fact that,
treatment.
as you've said, the next rounds were managed so much better. So
They were.
that is, I used to speak, because it was lockdown, I'd speak to my oncologist on the phone after
Mm,
treatment, but it would always feel a little bit like, oh, this is a conversation just to see if I can keep handling this
yeah,
treatment, right? Like,
yeah.
and that is really, they're there to kind of go, okay, so you're suffering with that now.
Hmm.
Let's adjust this, or let's give you this treatment that will counteract,
Yeah,
the heartburn I was having, or I think I was having real digestive issues. So they
yeah.
gave me something, and I can't remember what it was now. But they're there to kind of go, we want to give you all this treatment, and we want to give you as much of it as possible, but not to like
Yeah,
that level of
yeah,
being
yeah.
so so unwell. So that's really important.
Hmm.
What One thing I would love to ask is, during chemo, is there any advice you would give anyone kind of that's maybe newly diagnosed? Because we don't want to terrify people, which is why I think it is always so important to say
Yeah,
everyone is different.
yeah.
But also, it is, we know from films, maybe it's not portrayed in the totally correct way. I don't think it
Hmm.
is at all, because I thought I was going to be, you know, really sick over a
Yeah,
toilet and losing loads of weight during chemo, and that wasn't my reality. So
yeah,
there are different ways that chemo can impact, and even things like chemo can be a tablet form, which maybe heading in I didn't realize. I thought it was all intravenous.
yeah.
So yeah, I guess just any advice, anything that helped you get through, would be great.
I think it's kind of getting to know your chemo cycle is quite helpful, because obviously for me it was kind of 1 week of really not being great. Well, that first time horrendous, but once it was managed, that first week it was kind of need to stay in, really
Yeah.
rest, slept loads, but try to eat, and keep your energy levels up. Eat what you fancy, because otherwise you won't eat. You have to go with what your body is telling you can eat. And for me, that was kind of ginger biscuits, tuna sandwiches, and chicken broth, which is like really, really odd.
And not all together, hopefully.
No, no, not all together, not all together. But I did get weird cravings as well, in the same way that
Isn't
you
that
do
funny?
when
I
you're
don't think that's
pregnant.
talked about that much.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
the
yeah.
craving side
It's
of it.
lost you again,
No.
Carly.
Oh, yes, right. Working out your weeks, your pattern,
Yeah,
it's really invaluable if you have one. So I
yeah,
have heard from some people who kind of are like, oh, I don't know, it was all a bit all over the place. I definitely did find a pattern to my weeks as well.
absolutely.
And as I
Mm.
said, didn't know about OWise, didn't have OWise, but that I think is also so important for
Yeah.
recognizing patterns, because if you're tracking your symptoms and you're like, oh, you can see it on a graph, like I'm
Hmm.
good on these days.
Yeah,
So your chemos were every 3 weeks. So your first week
that's right.
was
First week was
pretty
not
awful.
great. Yeah, second week was when you're told by the team you're at your most vulnerable. Your white blood count is likely to be low. You're vulnerable to picking up infections. So kind of try and stay away from people, but get out. You do get fatigued. The fatigue in some cases is, it just kind of hits you, and it's it's overwhelming sometimes. But I
Yeah.
did used to find that actually, however much I felt, no, there's no way, I would get myself up and out the door for a really short walk, just round the block, and I would feel so much better for it. I don't know if it was a mental thing or a physical thing, but
I think I really think it's both, actually. And I
Mm,
think there's so much research now around exercise during
yeah,
treatment,
yeah,
and whether that is, you know, you do the best you can do. And if that
mhm,
is literally just being able to get out of bed and go for a short walk, then that is hugely beneficial. I actually
yeah,
spoke to someone just before starting treatment, and they said that to me too. And I tried to,
yeah,
keep that at the
yeah,
forefront, was just
yeah.
gentle movement would
Gentle
help.
movement, the fresh air, I think helps. And
Mm.
you fight fatigue with movement. I think that's the message. So during that second week, whilst you've got to be mindful that you shouldn't really be picking up bugs and germs and that kind of thing, you still need to kind of get up and out there. And then the last week is the week that you fill with all the the catching up, the taking the kids to school, doing the school run, doing the shopping, whatever you feel that you can do, because your energy levels tend to be a bit better and you're feeling better. But what's ironic is that you are hurtling towards the next
Uh,
week of feeling rubbish. So
but I think you've hit the nail on the head in that respect of, so many people in the cancer community talk about this shift in perspective. And when
yeah,
you are hurtling towards not feeling well again,
yeah,
you take those days or those moments
yeah,
so yeah, you just, there's a different energy for me, I found, on those
yeah.
days, because I'd be like, oh my god, feeling well was just such a
Mhm,
novelty.
mhm. Yeah, it's a very strange concept to get your head round, that you're literally schedulizing feeling unwell. It's you know
It's weird.
it's very strange, but once you've been through that, you really do appreciate when you feel well. So yeah, that's the advice I'd give, is you kind of have to go with the flow, but
Yeah.
get to know it, and then you can plan it a little bit better. So yeah.
And I know, from seeing in your biog on Instagram, that you love raving.
Oh, I
You
wondered if
are
that might come up.
absolutely. I am a rave virgin. I've never
Okay.
been to one.
Oh
I
wow.
was actually talking to someone recently whose nickname was Rave, and we had a whole conversation about raving. So it seems to be, yeah, coming into my universe. Maybe it's the universe saying I've got to go to a rave. But
Oh wow.
so when you were diagnosed, obviously
Yeah.
you were a mum to young kids. Was raving still a big part of your life at that
Not really.
point? Not,
No,
not really.
no, not
Okay.
really. It was very much pre-kids. And actually I mean, they say that kind of the electronic kind of raving generation started in the early 90s. Now, I was too young for that. But I did used to listen to my sister's mixtapes in my bedroom, so I was too young to go to raves when it all kicked off. And then when I got older was kind of it was the 2000s, and that's when they say it all finished. But I was still, there was still a scene. And I went out a lot, and well, not a lot, but I enjoyed the music. I really enjoy drum and
Yeah.
bass. That's my jam. I met my husband. He happens to be into the same kind of thing. Then we had kids, and it does fall away. It's not part of your
Yeah.
life anymore, because one, you can't deal with the hangovers and the late nights and all that kind of thing. But our kids are older now. We've got a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old, and they don't need us quite so much anymore. And and after my experience, I was kind of like, I want to go and enjoy that music again. And
Yeah, so my question was there a big celebratory rave at the end of your treatment and when you kind of
yeah,
came through it?
I wouldn't say was there a particular, no, we just kind of
No.
started going out a little bit more. Um, I'd say it's kind of probably only been over the last 12 months that we've really kind of ramped it up a little bit, and that's been a bit of me kind of going, oh, life's too short, and just booking tickets and And yeah, we've been, and what's been so nice actually is I kind of feel like we found each other again. My husband, our relationship, in the lead up to cancer, it was as a lot of couples, when you've got young kids, you're just busy doing other stuff, and you tend to kind of forget why you fell in love with each other in the first place. We weren't in a great place, is what I'll
Mm-hmm.
say. Then when I got ill, my husband was just so amazing,
Mm.
so amazing. Um, he was dad, mum, cook, bottle washer, working full time, brilliant with
Mm.
the boys, all those kind of things, but also looking after me. Had a little schedule of when I had to take my meds, and he'd be bringing me food and drink and making sure I was having enough water and all that kind of stuff. And I really learned what was important about a relationship. It's not the flowers and chocolates and gifts and dinners and nights out.
Yeah.
It's that connection. It's the little things.
Mm.
He had an absolute faith that I was going to be okay. He never showed any real kind of concern. I didn't have times where I kind of had to be there for him because he was worried or whatever. It was just like, you are going to be fine. You're going to be fine, and that's all. That's full stop. And he was fantastic, and I think I really fell in love with him all over again.
My
Um,
God, that's really beautiful.
and sorry,
Sorry,
I'm
I'm crying.
I'm getting choked up. And then the kids were still relatively young, and we were doing our thing, but I appreciated him so much more than I had previously, and it saved us. I think it's a really strange
Mm.
thing to say that it saved us, but I think it probably did. And
Really lovely.
yeah, and then
Has
since the kids have been older, like I said, we've picked up the raving again, and that's even better.
just amazing,
Mm.
amazing. We're still quite in the thick of youngish kids with an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
Obviously not that I was a raver, but I really, really, yeah, I really felt that.
Mhm.
They take on a lot if you have a partner when you're diagnosed. Like my husband, like you, was, and
Yeah.
it was during lockdown, took
Yeah.
on so much.
Mhm.
It's tough. It's tough for them. Like, did your husband, talking of kind of the carer side of things and him not being worried about your health, when you got through it, because often we hear about that's quite a hard time for those who are diagnosed, is at the end, the mental health and things like that. Did he kind of collapse at all? Not collapse, but
I've
like
been
anything
waiting
like that
for it.
after, because he was
No,
holding it all for you?
no,
No.
I have been waiting for it ever since, and it's never happened. He's
Incredible.
just he's just got such an incredibly positive, laid back personality anyway, that I like I said, I was kind of like, "Ooh, when's it gonna happen? When's it gonna get? When's he
Yeah.
gonna crash?" And it yeah, to date it still hasn't happened. And we talk about the mental health side of things. I crashed. I was better, and about
Yeah.
18
Yeah.
months
It's
later,
like that. Me too. Me too.
PTSD kicked in, and I crashed again, and he was there to pick me back up again.
Mm.
Yeah, they're
What else helped you? What else helped you then with
um
yeah, because you said 8 years. Is it 8 years post?
it's 8 years kind of. I was having my last chemo kind of 8 years ago.
I mean,
Um,
that's incredible.
yeah, so 8 years in,
Do you
like I
still
said,
have fear of recurrence? Is it still something that is there
it's
for
I don't think
you?
I don't think it'll ever leave. I think the thing for me is that, because I mean, this is a whole other kind of level of a whole other story associated with my cancer, if you like. I'm still having surgery. So
Okay.
I had surgery in December, just gone, on my good breast, good breast,
Mhm.
because I'm on tamoxifen. The side effects were really kind of getting me down for a period of time. My team said, take a break and let's, just take a break, feel good again for a period of time, then we can go back to it. It's not going to do you any it's not going to do you any harm. Next thing I know, my good breast just blew up. So it just grew like, I don't know the full reasons behind it, but I'm assuming it's because tamoxifen obviously blocks the estrogen to the breast tissue, and coming off it, the blocker's removed, the breast tissue is then impacted by the estrogen, and it just went. So
did that terrify you? Because
yes,
obviously,
initially,
once you have a diagnosis and maybe you become more aware of signs and symptoms, change in shape, right,
yeah, change
is
in
one of
shape,
the
change
ones
in
that's
size,
like.
and I felt a
So I
lump.
think,
I was like,
yeah,
so breast clinic, it wasn't that. It was just that the breast tissue had, as breasts do with changes in hormone levels, go up and down. But in my case, it was an extreme reaction, and I was then kind of 3-4 cup sizes bigger than my reconstructed breast, which in terms of symmetry, I tried to get my head around it, and it was really difficult. So I eventually went back to my surgeon, and I said, I can't live like this, because it didn't go back down again. And the solution was to have a bilateral mastectomy. So I've had the preparation surgery for that in December to make sure that the breast is the right size, and I'm still waiting for the mastectomy. So I'm on the list, but I've got another operation to go. So whilst recurrence it's not at the forefront of my mind, getting to a place where I feel like I'm at the end of my the end.
Yeah, because I guess once you have that surgery, your risk,
Risk
I'm similar with a
reduces.
double mastectomy.
It's
That
risk
is quite.
reducing. But it also means that when I come off tamoxifen permanently, eventually, the same thing won't happen again. And that was my biggest concern. It was kind of, you could do a mastopexy or a mammoplasty to uplift it and make it the right size, but it's the breast tissue that's the problem. That's the variable. And when I come off tamoxifen, is it going to happen again? Am I going to be back here again in another 3 years' time? I can't. I just want it to be over.
And have your team been really supportive of you in making that decision? Was it kind of, because I sometimes hear of people wanting to have the mastectomy on their good side, and it isn't as straightforward as you would think, considering these are our bodies and we should be able to make these decisions.
Exactly right. I mean, my initial response to my cancer diagnosis when they offered me the mastectomy was, take them both. I want them both gone. I want them both gone. And I was told at that point, we will not remove a healthy breast. So that's why I had a single mastectomy. They wouldn't do it. And I understood the reasons behind it, the 3 years, high risk of recurrence in that time. And actually, if you take a healthy breast, where do you go from there if it recurs? My consultant talked about it as leaving sacrificial tissue, if that makes sense. So because breast cancer can still come back in the skin and the nipple and and other places, if you take breast tissue of a healthy breast and it is going to reoccur, then where do you go from there? So that was the reasoning behind the single mastectomy. But part of me does look back and just thinks, if you'd have done what I wanted in the first place, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be where I am 8 years on, still having surgery. They have been supportive, but it's taken a long time. I mean, with all of these things, the NHS is fantastic, but it was a good 18 months between the hypertrophy of my breast to actually getting something done about it. And there's another waiting period now to finally have the breast tissue removed. So So yeah.
Oh, I really, really hope you get your date soon, and you can kind of. I feel like that will be a big, yeah, really big milestone for you to kind of start to.
Yeah,
You would never put it behind us, just move forward in a different way, right? I think
absolutely.
is that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's a really empowered decision that you've come to, and
yeah,
yeah, it's great.
yeah, yeah. It'd be good to be
Mandy,
able to close the door. Yes.
yeah, exactly,
Mm.
exactly. Thank you so, so much. Honestly, you have been incredible and taught me so much. And
Oh
that's
wow.
what's, I think, so amazing about these conversations. Like, gosh, every single person has such a different diagnosis,
Mhm,
experience,
mhm.
surgical experience. Like it's amazing to speak to you and to get. I feel very honored to be able to share your story, and I know that anyone watching will find it really helpful, especially to see you so many years on doing
Mhm.
so well, looking so well. Really, that's
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so
And
much.
thank you for taking the time to I'd like to thank OWise as well, because looking at their app, it's come a little bit late for me, but I still think it's a fantastic tool for those starting on the journey. And actually I do use it. I do use it
Yeah.
now. I'm coming up to an age where the menopausal symptoms are kicking in, and it's helpful to record those as well. So
It's so
yeah,
true. I use it too.
yeah,
And then if there's anything for longer than a few weeks, I'm a bit like, oh, maybe I should
yeah,
speak to my team. Always speak to your team, people.
yes,
And
definitely do that.
yeah,
Definitely do that. But thank you
yeah.
so much, Carly. Okay, and
Thanks,
it's
Mandy.
lovely to
Hopefully,
speak
I'll
to you.
see you in person soon.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, take
Cool.
care.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.
Bye.